Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day. Kansas City Chiefs are officially in the basement. They are cellar dwellers, the only AFC West team to start this season with a loss. But they will learn from this, and I think we might as well, because I have here 6 things that we can take from this game and learn about the defense. Yesterday, I posted a video on what we can learn about the offense from this Week 1 disaster in Brazil. But here are 6 thoughts on the defense. Number 1 is this. I try to admit it when it's true. Your old buddy scrambling may have been wrong. I spent all offseason touting Jaden Hicks not just as a starting safety for the Kansas City Chiefs, but perhaps as the next big star at the safety position. Maybe even on a league-wide basis. The way that he had played to close out last season, the way that he had played in sparing time during the 2024 season led me to believe that with a larger role, Jaden Hicks could be the next big thing. But here was his Week 1 performance. And look, that does not preclude him from being a good player at the safety position, but I think that it is very rare that a star player has this type of performance. A 29.7 overall grade from PFF, good against the run, 68.6, but maybe we should put him at linebacker because he had a coverage grade of just 31.2. You will notice also he allowed 4 receptions and only made 3 tackles. So there is something to be desired from Jaden Hicks moving forward for these Kansas City Chiefs. I do stand by the analysis that he has the tools to be good on the football field, but we can go back all the way this preseason, back to Week 1 of the preseason. And Jaden Hicks has not looked like the same player that ended last season on the field for the Chiefs. He has been, in my opinion, down all year. I'm not sure to what we could attribute that. I'm not sure because look, you can't attribute that to Justin Reid not being here any longer. You can't, because this is this player's performance. I do not know off the top of my head, and I do not know how I would tell personnel groupings from last year. I don't think that he was on the field with Justin Reid every time that he was on the field. So for such a precipitous fall off to have happened, I think that this is something somewhere else. I cannot say that this is something that you can point to Justin Reid's absence and say, well, that guy's not here anymore. This guy must be worse because of it. Or Justin Reid was holding up Jaden Hicks last season. In fact, I know several times Jaden Hicks was on the field and made plays. There almost could not have been Justin Reid on the field because he was out there in sort of mop-up duty. So I don't know how this happened, but it appears this thing has happened. The number 2 thing here, the defensive line is getting more movement in the pass rush, but it did not necessarily come out in results. They got 4 hits on quarterback and 3 sacks. They managed 6 tackles for loss as well as a defense, not necessarily as a defensive line group, but when the moments were the most important, they could not get home. They could not get off of the field. Now, they were facing, I think Alt is going to be one of the best left tackles in the league for a long time. I think that the unfortunate injury to his teammate who was playing left tackle, that's unfortunate for the Chargers. Again, like I said in the pregame run-up, it's unfortunate, but you can't apologize for it as an opposing team. But I think that his injury opened the door for Alt to get those reps and those looks at left tackle. And with Slater gone and Alt on the field, I think he's going to take that left tackle position, and it's going to open up the Chargers for some interesting things in the future. Will they keep him on the team? Not Alt. If they get adequate right tackle play here, guys, I think that they might find a way to move on from their newly expensive possibly expendable tackle. But the defensive line for the Chiefs, no, it wasn't perfect, obviously. No, they didn't get to the quarterback that many times. 3 sacks is a good game, but it's not a great game. And 4 quarterback hits, that could certainly be higher. But I think that this was a good starting point from last season. This puts them on pace for a decent number of sacks, and I don't think that Justin Herbert's going to be the most easily sackable quarterback in the NFL, and he's playing behind an otherwise solid offensive line. So that tells me this pass rush is much improved, even without Omar Norman, who we're going to talk about in a moment. The next thing, the number 3 thing here, this is not the defense that we will see in Week 15, for example, just as a random week number. Spags defenses pretty much always get better as the season goes on. And with the post-game tempers flaring the way they did between Drew Tranquill and Chris Jones, the defense knows that they not only can play better, but they should play better. They are expected to play better. They expect themselves to play better. Look, the defense was not as shorthanded as was the offense, who, I will say it again, the offense was down 3 of their top 4 wide receivers, something to which Patrick Mahomes must be getting used at this point. But there was no Omar Norman, and he was being counted on to be one of the pieces along that defensive line that made things better. They lost FAU before the season, and I know he's not someone who plays often. He was not going to be counted on to be a contributor. I think it was counted on to be a contributor this season. I think it was counted on to get snaps this season, but no one was counting on him to be a starting force for this defensive line. That said, once you drop off from FAU to Malik Herring, it gets a lot harder to get to the quarterback. And you're looking at a player who is not quite so mobile as FAU in Malik Herring. So I think that loss, when it occurred, now, allow me to tip my tinfoil hat, but FAU was written off really quickly after a hamstring injury popped up. So maybe he was being looked at to be cut anyway. But I do think that when you look at the numbers, he is roughly as effective in a snap-by-snap basis as is Mike Danna. So probably he could not put that on display over the course of an entire game or season, and I think he's unlikely to be as effective setting an edge as Mike Danna. But you're still missing a player who I think was going to be counted on for reps this season. So look, you're not bringing him back. He's on the injured reserve, but it is something that I think that they had to adjust for in short fashion. So the offense was kind of able to do it on the run with Xavier Worthy. The defense doesn't have as many pieces, especially at that defensive end position, not as many pieces that can contribute, and certainly not as many pieces that can contribute in the pass rush. So I think that this defense will gel as the season goes on. The scheme for the defense will expand as the season goes on. You will see players grow into their roles as the season goes on. And it is exceedingly rare that you get more healthy as the season goes on, but so too does not anyone else, right? So while it is likely that players will miss games for this Chiefs defense and sort of prohibit that gelling factor for the defense, players will miss games for opposing offenses as well. So I think that all things considered equal, all things hypothetically equal moving forward for the Chiefs and this defense, they're going to get better at a more rapid pace than opposing offenses. That is what we have seen from Spagnuolo defenses in the past, and I think we have every reason to believe that is what will happen here. So room for growth. Well, we already talked about Omar Norman not playing. This previous draft was heavily defensive, right? I think it was 4 defensive players, 3 offensive players, top of my head, right? So, and it appears that those players are being brought along slowly. Omar Norman-Lott obviously was out. Jeffrey Bassa, and Noel Williams did not play. And Ashton Gelati, of Fighting Josh Simmons fame, played just 9 snaps. I do not think this is a sign that this draft class is a failure, but rather a sign that the Chiefs probably felt this was kind of a must-win game. It's early in the season. You have a chance to jump out and take a lead in the division. They wanted this win. This was kind of a playoff atmosphere from the Kansas City Chiefs, put on by the NFL by hosting it in a different country, kind of a playoff atmosphere in the fact that everyone is, for the 19th season in a row, picking the Chargers as preseason favorites. So the Chiefs, I think, treated this largely as a must-win game, and the 4 players in their first NFL regular season week of action with extended playing in Brazil circumstances would likely have been more of a liability than not. And for what it's worth, in Ashton Gelati's 9 snaps, he recorded both a solo tackle and a pressure that is affecting the play on 2 out of 9 snaps. That's not bad. He's going to have a decent rookie season, but the faster that he can reach stride, the better it will be for a defense that looks like it's going to have struggles in the secondary. And the way to make your secondary look better is not allowing the quarterback a lot of time. Number 5 here, we need to slow down. I said this in the game review for this week, and I'm reminding myself, just as well as I am making this a part of the commentary, this was a loss, but it wasn't a disaster. Yes, the defense made Justin Herbert look a lot like the quarterback everyone says he is in the offseason, but not the quarterback that he becomes in the playoffs. But the Chargers still only scored 27 points. They weren't in a boat race. Herbert had a 131.7 rating. That's really good. But he threw for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. Still really good, but it was not an all-timer of a performance. And at the end of the day, number 1, Justin Herbert's going to do this to some people. He is a guy with a 5,000-yard season under his belt. And number 2, the Chiefs are 0-1. Not 0-4, not 1-6. This was not a game without highlight for the Kansas City Chiefs. It might have been a game without highlight for the Chiefs' defense. And it is a hole out of which they must dig themselves, but it is a hole out of which they can dig themselves. So where is that hole precisely? Well, the defensive backs are perplexing. Everyone looked bad, but Trent McDuffie. That's it. Everyone looked bad, but Trent McDuffie. But when one player is good enough to make the entire unit look kind of like a mixed bag, it's pretty promising. In an article titled 5 Winners and 5 Losers from the Chiefs' Loss to the Chargers in Brazil, subtitled Which Kansas City Players Caught Our Attention During Week 1's Loss to Los Angeles by Matt Stagner from Arrowhead Pride, he says this about cornerback Trent McDuffie. The defense's other All-Pro was great against the Chargers. He may have been the only member of the secondary who was able to cover anyone. He batted down a pass and had 5 tackles. So this was what Trent McDuffie did versus the Chargers. He had a 70.2 overall grade, a 56.5 pass rush grade. Take that for what it's worth, a 71.4 run defense grade, and a 69.0 pass coverage grade. He had 4 solo tackles and allowed 4 receptions. He did all of this on 65 snaps. So 65 snaps is a lot of snaps. So 64, 65. I'm getting different numbers, different places. I try to consult multiple sources for this, but 65 snaps, we'll just say, and over that, he had a 69.0 coverage. Herbert had a 131.7 rating for the game, as we mentioned earlier, but an 82.9 rating when targeting McDuffie. That is a difference of 40 points. But let's take a step back. The defensive backs did not look great, right? We can all agree on that. The Chiefs, one of the only free agent additions that they made this season was Kristian Fulton to play cornerback after a 2024 season where the third and fourth cornerbacks not only spent time injured, but did not look good, whether it was the fourth cornerback coming in for the third or the fifth coming in for the fourth, etc. Kristian Fulton himself, after a tumultuous offseason of rehab, played just 15 snaps. I believe he will play more in the future. I think he will play in the future for the Chiefs a whole lot more. He was probably not in shape after not spending very much time on a football field in the preseason. Now, you might have caught that. We talked about Kristian Fulton playing just 15 snaps. Earlier, I mentioned Noel Williams didn't play at all, didn't play a lick of defense. I believe he had 20 special team snaps. So just who did play cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, one answer is pretty obvious. You're very familiar with him. McDuffie played 65 snaps, again, depending on where you get the number, but so did Jaylen Watson. But Watson, who got a 45.6% grade in pass coverage, gave up just 3 official receptions. Now, you can be degraded when you're not directly giving up a reception, obviously. But if he gave up just 3 official receptions, where did everything else go? Enter Chamarri CONNER, who played 64 snaps. Now, I believe did I get that? He total had 10 tackles. Not a great sign. But those were the only players who lined up at cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Chamarri CONNER, Jaylen Watson, Kristian Fulton for 15, and Trent McDuffie. Jaylen Watson, Chamarri CONNER, and Trent McDuffie basically played every snap of defense. So Chamarri CONNER on the day had a 42.2 overall grade. A 42.2 overall grade. Now, a 73.1 pass rush grade, great. Put him at defensive end because he got a 42.3 run defense grade and a 45.6 pass coverage grade. He did get a pressure, but he gave up 7 receptions total on the day, directly on the day, and got 6 tackles. Again, you might notice a difference of -1 between the receptions he allowed and the tackles he made. But those are just the tackles that he made solo. I believe he was in on 10 total tackles. So, Chamarri CONNER. Chamarri CONNER needs to come off the field maybe a little bit. Give him some rest. I have never known exactly what the Chiefs saw in Chamarri CONNER, and I'm not saying this for divisive purposes. I'm not saying this to sort of play, Monday morning quarterback. You can go back on the channel to where he was. I might have had to take down the video where he was drafted, but I kind of, even at the time, didn't really get it. I kind of coughed it up to Brett Veach wants defensive backs because Brett Veach likes to have defensive backs when he was drafted. But I didn't get it then. I don't get it now. I don't understand the fascination with Chamarri CONNER. I don't see anything that he has flashed. So I'm just out on Chamarri CONNER. Now, what I say doesn't matter. I am here to try to comment on exactly what it was that did happen, not prognosticate or dictate what will happen. But those are the thoughts that I have on the Chiefs defense from this week 1 loss to the Chargers. I think that it is a bad building block. But it is a building block. We saw some things that were perhaps promising. Drue Tranquill reemerged for this defense after an absentee 2024, coming up with 2 sacks, coming up with a spanking of Chris Jones after the game. And Chris Jones may have been largely invisible, but Ashton Gillotte made some progress in his limited snaps on the field. George Karlaftis may have been largely absentee in this game, but I think he was going up primarily against alt-right. Alt-right. Shouldn't have said that. YouTube's going to spank me for that. But going up against Joe Alt, comma, space, correct. So I do think that there were some promising aspects, along with Trent McDuffie looking again like he is having an absolutely stupendous, or going to have an absolutely stupendous year. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments, because this was a little bit of a difficult video to make, to find talking points for the defense that were not just head scratching and me cursing into a microphone. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.